When was the last time you felt genuinely well? Not relieved, not distracted, not busy. Well. Take a moment with that. Not the feeling after finishing something stressful, not the exhale when a difficult conversation ends, not the numbness that comes after a long day when you finally sit down and nothing is actively wrong. Something quieter than that. Something that doesn't need contrast to exist. Can you find it? Most people, when they try to locate that feeling, realize they're reaching for something they haven't touched in a while. Not because life is catastrophic, not because anything is visibly broken, but because somewhere along the way the baseline shifted, and you adjusted, and then you forgot you adjusted. Notice what your body does on a regular Tuesday morning. There's a low hum of something before you even check your phone, a faint anticipation of what needs to happen, what might go wrong, what you haven't finished yet. Your shoulders carry a tension that was already there when you woke up. Your first breath of the day is rarely deep. You move through the morning on a kind of autopilot that feels like functioning. And functioning, after long enough, starts to feel like fine. Here's the mechanism. The nervous system is extraordinarily adaptive. When discomfort is consistent and unavoidable, it stops flagging it as an alert. It reclassifies it as background, not because the discomfort disappeared, but because treating it as an emergency every day is not sustainable. So the system does what it was built to do. It normalizes. And you wake up one day and the low-grade tension in your chest isn't something you notice anymore. It's just the feeling of being awake. You call it being realistic. It's habituation with a story on top. The story is important because you didn't just adapt silently. You built a narrative around the adaptation. You became someone who doesn't need much, someone who handles things, someone who has been through harder and came out the other side. And that narrative is true. You did handle things. You did come through. But somewhere in that process, tolerating became a personality trait. Enduring became an identity. And the question of whether you're actually okay stopped being a real question, because the answer was always going to be yes. You had to be okay. You'd built yourself around being okay. So the signals started going quiet. The irritability that shows up for no clear reason, the way certain conversations leave you more drained than they should, the small resistance before doing things you used to enjoy, the moment mid-sentence when you lose the thread of what you were saying and feel briefly like you're very far away. These aren't dramatic. They don't interrupt your day. They're just there, consistently, quietly. And because they're consistent, they stopped feeling like signals. They started feeling like you. There's a specific kind of exhaustion that doesn't show up as tiredness. It shows up as mild indifference, a slight flattening of things that used to have texture. The way food tastes fine, but not quite the way you remember it tasting. The way a good thing happens and you feel something, but less than you expected to feel. You call it growing up. It's depletion wearing a mature face. And here's what makes this particular, what makes it different from ordinary stress or ordinary sadness. You're not suffering visibly. You're functioning. You're meeting your obligations. You're present enough in conversations that no one would notice. You might even be the person other people come to when they're not okay, because you know how to hold things together. You've had a lot of practice. The cost of that practice is subtle. It's the distance between who you are in a given moment and who you would be if you weren't managing quite so much. It's the energy that goes into maintaining the appearance of fine, not for others, but for yourself. The internal monitoring, the constant low-level assessment of whether you're coping adequately. You call it self-awareness. It's surveillance with no off switch. What's buried under all of this isn't necessarily trauma.
It isn't necessarily anything dramatic. It might just be a version of you that stopped being consulted, a version that had preferences and reactions and a particular way of feeling things that got quieter and quieter as the adaptation deepened. Not because it was silenced, because it learned that speaking up didn't change much, so it stopped. You are not broken. You are someone who learned to live inside a reduced range and learned it so well that the reduction became invisible. The ceiling came down slowly enough that you never had to duck. You just started walking slightly hunched, and eventually that felt like standing straight. That's not weakness. That's what humans do when the environment asks them to shrink for long enough. The question isn't whether you're okay. You're probably okay by most definitions. The question is whether okay is the right measure, whether the absence of crisis is the same as the presence of something worth calling well, whether the version of you that exists right now, functional, adaptive, holding it together, is the full version, or just the version that learned to fit. You don't have to answer that today, but the fact that the question lands somewhere, that it doesn't just slide off, that's worth sitting with. Not to fix anything, just to notice. If you want to keep going, stay here.